Welcome to the Old Goalies podcast, brought to you by White Glove Goalkeeping. Old Goalies is not intended for goalkeepers under the age of 17. Thanks again for listening to the Old Goalies with your hosts, Greg Deutsch, Pat Johnston, and Eric Vaughter. Today's guest is Lou Liberatore, National Goalkeeping Director for Kings Hammer Soccer Club.
Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Old Goalies. We are lucky tonight to have a special guest from the Cincinnati area and a well-known goalkeeper coach, what I call one of the young up-and-comers, Lou Liberatore, and he's joined us for today. He's under a tight schedule because he's got a full house tonight, so we're going to get right to it. Greg, before I hand it over to you, okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard us before. We sometimes get salty with this. Sorry about that. We're old guys. You'll have to deal with it. Number two is we have our opinions. There are opinions. You can't have them, and they're not etched in stone. So do with them what you will. So, all right, Greg, it's up to you.
All right, Lou, thanks for being on. Evie, obviously you know him.
Yes.
When he was passing through Nashville for a little bit, he has been in a few places. Evie. Seems like a lot of our guests are. I believe he's been in 6 different states. Grew up in Raleigh, so obviously North Carolina, Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio. Left to go to Tennessee, came back. So we're going to talk a little about all that. So Lou, let's jump into it. You know, I find this interesting. First, you were named the Director of Goalkeeping for the Kings Hammer Club, and then now it's the National Goalkeeper Director. Is it more money, just a title? You know, what's the big change here?
Well, first, thanks for having me on, guys. Good to be with some friends and a new friend, Pat, who within the last year, thanks to Greg. So just love being on. So a little bit of both. More money, less field time, and more of a, I call it the corporate side of the youth game. I'm in charge of hiring and directing and mentoring our directors in all our locations, making sure they do goalkeeping the King's Hammer way, and making sure the goalkeepers are taught in a positive way based on our goalkeeper specific game model, which I wrote. And then I also manage our college stuff now as of like 3 days ago. And I also manage what's called our high performing player pathway. So basically I use all my relationships and try to get our boys into MLS academies and our girls opportunities with the youth national team, because, you know, NWSL and Super League are slow to the game of academies. So that is, that last part may not be politically correct, but it's the truth. So
could I ask a question real quick? Who does Cincinnati's goalkeeper assessments to come into the academy?
In terms of the academy or in terms of us?
The academy.
So technically now they've expanded their role to 2 goalkeeper coaches, and their lead goalkeeper coach, Alex Federle, is in charge of making the decision of who they invite in. So
okay.
Previously it was Bobby Edwards and Ryan Coulter. Bobby's off living the pickleball fiance life down in Florida. And then and Ryan, now that they have 2 guys in the academy, Alex Federle and Fionn, Alex kind of takes the lead. So
well, I just asked because and this isn't a plug. One of my Y Club boys somehow ended up in Cincinnati for a week-long trial, and I knew Alex was there, but I didn't know if he was the one making the calls.
It's Alex brings the ones he thinks can fit their bill to Paul Rogers, and Paul Rogers has the final say. if a kid's on the border. So like if a kid doesn't fit the projected 6'3", Raj ain't taking him. It's just not happening. That's just Raj's profile. Like number one thing is like, that kid's not going to be 6'3" because mom and dad are 5'10", and the testing they do shows the kid's only going to be 6'1". Like he's scaled a little bit back, but the reality is he wants a certain type, and that doesn't matter how good they are. The saying, if they're tall enough, they're good enough, or if they're good enough, they're tall enough. John Bush would have no chance of playing for FCC.
That's it. I'm glad you brought up Bushy because, he's like an inspiration. It's like to all these guys. I mean,
to guys, the only reason I kept playing was Bushy, and now I call him a friend, so I'll take it.
Show, but take it away. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
I'm sorry. What's that, Greg?
No. Like what, he just mentioned Bushy, and that's one of the people that inspired him to be a goalkeeper. So, Lou, talk a little bit about that. How did you, quote, find Bushy, and have you ever met him and talked to him, and what was that, conversation like?
Yeah, well, in the 90s when I was growing up, MLS kind of took off, and all of a sudden there's a dude who's your size, and you're like, well, that's my favorite goalkeeper. And then Chicago Fire played the old Railhawks in the Open Cup, and Bushy was like the only player on the Fire who was talking to any of the kids that were waiting instead of just brushing them off. And so I met him briefly then, and then never really talked to him again. And then started coaching, and Jason Grubb, who's at San Diego, connected me with him, tried to do a glove deal with him, and I was young and dumb, and I wanted everything for free, quite honestly. So then that kind of stalled it. And then when I was quote unquote visiting / interviewing at TSC, that's when Bushy and I really connected, thanks to EV. And then it kind of developed over time, and now Bushy and I work together to revamp United Soccer Coaches goalkeeping diplomas. So we're actually going to launch a brand new diploma at the Riverhounds facility this July. So, and Bushy's a huge piece of that. And then we spent about 6 months on a course together with the launch of the goalkeeper course finally from US Soccer, and we both share pretty similar opinions that you didn't talk enough about goalkeeping on the course. So that kind of solidified our friendship there. So
interesting. Since I know you have a lot of licensed diplomas, EV and Pat, I don't think we've had anyone on, to my recollection. Brian, you might want to do a little research. And I'm just wondering why you did this one. The Scottish FA Goalkeeping Coaching Award.
So
really
that was
noticed for goalkeeping. So
yeah.
I'm just wondering, you wake up one morning and go, Scotland, or how does it work?
Well, trying to get onto anything UEFA as an American is next to impossible unless you live in England or one of those countries. And the Scottish FA is one of the few, besides Wales, who are open to anyone getting on their courses. And so during COVID, again, going back to I was bored, and no one was doing anything, but Scotland was doing virtual stuff. So, and their course, I think their course was $75 for that. And then the plan was to go and do the UEFA B goalkeeping, but that was every American goalkeeper coach's plan. So when that course went live for like a virtual version of it, and then a couple days in Scotland, I was coaching, so I couldn't register. So I missed that window. So that was the reason. But Bushy and I actually took that course together too. So I forgot about that. So
what would you say you learned from it that you were maybe surprised?
That we overcomplicate it here. They're still very simple, basic, keep round thing out of white thing with net, make it about the goalkeeper, not about you. That was probably a refreshing thing. And then you didn't get slammed for how you planned a session. They just helped you make it better. Whereas, some courses you take, they're like, you have to do it this way, no matter what. You're like, well, I don't have half a field in Cincinnati. Like how is this helping me get better as a coach with what my environment actually is? And the response of, you need a better environment. I'm like, okay, well, you tell my wife that I need to go take an MLS job and never be around, so I have half a field. You can have that conversation. And by the way, I'll also take a 50% pay cut to go take that job too. So,
all right, fair enough. So you were obviously born in Raleigh. What you ended up?
That's correct. I was born in Boston and lived
okay.
in New York, and then my parents moved to Raleigh when I was about 5. So Raleigh is home. I'll never go back. I'll never move to North Carolina. I'm more Midwest, probably.
You say that now.
Okay.
There's been plenty of opportunities to go back, and I just don't. I don't jive with Southern hospitality. This might annoy some people, but the fake politeness it drives me off the wall. Like, tell me how it is and let's move on. I don't have time to pretend like an AV knows it. Like I don't play games with my players. I don't play games with their parents. I don't play games with the people I work with. And that is literally Southern culture. Like,
well, bless your heart, Lou.
Bless your heart, all that. Like, I don't have time for that. Like, you don't like me, just tell me. Don't give me a bless your heart. You know what I'm saying? Like,
okay, quick question. Born in Boston, moved to New York. Bruins or Rangers?
Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh, so okay. So we do have the hometown roots going.
And look,
I got you.
That's the first hockey game I went to in person. That was like a big deal. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. So when Dad brought home tickets or Mom won tickets at work, like that was a big deal. So I got to give it to them. And I was a senior in high school when they won the cup. So
were you really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So, I mean,
cool.
All the boys came over to the house to watch the game, and none of us knew a lick about hockey, but it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry, Bone. Sorry.
That's all right. So you end up at Belmont Abbey. What choices did you have at that time, and why did you choose Belmont Abbey?
Yeah. I had some pretty big D1 opportunities to go ride the Pine for textbooks. I pursued West Point for a little while and then realized that just wasn't going to work. And then Sewanee was actually in the mix. But the opportunity actually to play for the first coach that gave me a chance in the club world, Stuart Brown, I knew what I was going to get. I just knew what the culture was going to be with the team, and that's the kind of environment that I thrived in as a player. And then, we talk about fit with kids all the time. I set foot on that campus and looked at my mom before I even had an offer. I was like, I'm going to school here. This is where I'm going to school. And it was D2, and it was
it has like a Sewanee vibe to it.
It does. It does.
Yeah.
It's not as big as Sewanee in terms of campus and
very few are. Yeah.
But from you step foot on that campus, I-85 is right there, and you cannot hear anything. You have no idea that the highway's there. They played on grass. The conference and the region that they played in, that they still play in, was some of the best teams in Division II. And at the time, program was on the rise. It was on, I think, my 5th year was the only year we didn't make the conference tournament, and that was the first time in 22 years. But I played against guys like Luke Mulholland, he rocketed a ball off my face from as close as my computer is, playing Wingate. The level was so good, and I think that is a piece that people miss about D2, especially on the men's side. You're playing back then too. You couldn't get an international eligible for Division I. It was very hard. So there were guys who were just unbelievable players that I got to play against. And the best example is probably sophomore year. We played Lenore Ryan, who's always strong, and they had to forfeit their entire season because 10 of their 11 starters were found out to be on 100 pounds a day type thing. They were some really good players. like, so, like, that was why, Greg. I mean, soccer was awesome. School was good. If I'm being honest, it was a place where I could focus on being a soccer player and still graduate with a 4.0 and not have to do a lot of trying, you know.
Yeah. So I believe, was your major engineering at that time?
No, that was my brother.
Oh, okay.
My brother played at Drexel and was an engineer, but now he does social media. So, my parents are thrilled about that investment. No, I went into being econ major, realized very quickly that I don't like that world. Changed to theology. Again, realized that wasn't for me, and then was a psych major all within like 2 semesters. And then my freshman year, I redshirted because I got knocked out, like woke up in the training room. And then, so I had a 5th year. So then I added sports management. So sports management and psych were my 2 majors. And sports management was done in 3 semesters. That, again, going back to academically, I probably could have gone somewhere bigger, but that was not the number one focus.
Yeah.
I wanted to play soccer.
Evie, talk a little bit about Belmont Abbey. Obviously, Kenny Lola started his career there. Our friend Robbie Church did. Your friend Bill Susi, who was an All-American. Mike Lynch, who's currently there.
I mean, Belmont Abbey has it's a hidden gem of soccer history. It really is. I mean, all the way back, Greg, to when we were playing, and it always had good teams, always had, the Suarez brothers. I mean, there's a list of guys who played at Belmont Abbey who went on to be pros. And it's always, I've always kind of wanted to, if I could find somebody, to do a PBS documentary on, the hidden little soccer school that nobody, that if you played against them, you knew them because they were not easy to play against. And, but they have such a rich history, and it's, I mean, as Lou said, it's 22 years, they're always in the playoffs. I mean, the only other school that's like that is Chapel Hill on the women's side.
Guys, you're forgetting about Belmont Abbey's most famous son,
John Boa.
John Boa.
John Boa.
I was going to say, you guys forgot about Boa because he's all over the stuff. So the coach I played for my 5th year, John Keating, he actually went back and spent a lot of time basically finding all the history, all the alums, and reconnecting them and bringing them on campus and making it, that there's lights now at Belmont Abbey. And that's because he got all these alumni invested again, because he sent a bi-weekly newsletter, giving them an update,
Right.
Thanking them, all these different things. And like, I think it's crazy too. When I was in Tennessee, Evie and I coached a girl whose dad was also a goalkeeper there.
That's right.
I can't remember his name, but her name was Mason. And
Brett.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
And he was great, and we connected on that. And it's the history of Belmont Abbey men's soccer and now women's soccer is, I would say, one of the strongest in Division II. And what people don't realize is a lot of the strongest years were in NAIA, and
Yes.
It was, but Carolina wouldn't schedule them after a while. Carolina would never schedule us in the spring, especially after we went to Blacksburg and smacked Virginia Tech. Then we smacked them again in like Greensboro in a round robin. We played High Point, beat them. I think we lost to one Division I team in my 5 years. We had some players. And I just kind of stood back there and threw myself around like a rag doll. So,
Talk a little bit about Coach Lynch, the current women's coach. Obviously, he's been there, since 2011. Just incredible. He's bounced around a little bit. Now he's, solidified. What's your relationship with him, being a former alum and trying to get maybe, players, to their
well, I've sent players to the men's and women's programs. My wife played for 3 years for Lynch. They have a great relationship. So Lynch is a huge part of my life. He wanted to bring me on as one of his assistants, but that was when I was like, I got to get my master's. And at the time, there were no master's degrees at Belmont Abbey. But he's been very influential. He is someone that my wife and I trust. And honestly, I don't think that program's could be in any better hands. What he does, not only for the players, but the community, is something that I think a lot of programs could take note from. He also is a very loyal person. His current associate head coach has been with him since day one, and he has just help Jamie just develop and grow. And it's not just about players with him; it's about everybody. I don't think there's anyone that has a bad thing to say about Mike Lynch. And if they do, come talk to me, because I'll change your mind in about 5 seconds.
So tell us the road here. You graduate from Belmont, you become an assistant coach for the women's program. You end up at a place a lot of people don't know of, maybe not even heard of, Frostburg State. So Tell us that journey before we venture off here to some other programs.
Yeah. So like you said, I finished up in December, was doing some volunteer work, working in admissions at the Abbey, and then got hired at Frostburg State, which at the time was a D3 school in the tiniest part of Maryland. Like West Virginia was closer than Baltimore. Morgantown was about 45 minutes. So working with the men's and women's programs there, with 2 long-standing coaches. So that was great learning. But I was on the field every day in the fall for 6-7 hours. They were supposed to only work 20 hours as grad assistants. Yeah, that don't happen. But I loved every second of it. And then after that, that's when I, because of the women's coach, Brian Parker, I met and interviewed with Paul Marco, who just recently retired from Binghamton University on the men's side. So made the jump from D3 to D1, having never set foot on Binghamton's campus. Took a job via a Zoom interview. And then spent about 3 seasons, 3.5 years in Binghamton, New York, doing everything from goalkeepers to recruiting coordinator, just running the program day to day, everything. And then
let me hijack this a little bit here. What made you want to go into coaching?
Sure.
You mentioned your background in school, and how quickly you got some of these degrees. And did you just know, hey, I'm going to go into coaching and I'm going to see where this goes? Or did you just sort of work a camp, and then the camp led to it's always that, right?
The plan was always to go to OCS after graduation, join the Marines, go do that thing for a couple of years, see how that turned out. And then my goalkeeper coach, Ben Pinkerton, who passed away 2016, he called me and said, hey, do you want to work goalkeeper camp this summer? Like, I was done with soccer. I wasn't going to go back for the 5th year. I said, sure. I needed money, and I got to get fit for the last go around. And then I, called the stewards after about 10 weeks on the road, the traveling circus that was the old Soccer Plus goalkeeper schools. It's like, hey, I'm going to come back for my 5th year. I know it's supposed to be my last year, but I'm going to come back. Just for your planning. He was like, great. That's awesome. And then, called my parents, said, hey, I'm not going to turn in that OCS application. I'm going to coach soccer for a living. That didn't necessarily go over as well as one might think. So, and then just started volunteering with the women's team while I was still playing, and then kind of snowballed from there. And then the summer before my 5th year was when I was fortunate to work alongside Tony DeChico, because he was back working the camps, and that in itself was an education, and it was always interesting. We'd be sitting in some random college cafeteria and somebody would go, "That's Tony DeChico." And I'm like, you can say hello. Like, he's just a regular dude. And like, these are random people. So that was kind of what spearheaded it all, was that working those camps, finding the passion again, I guess, because sometimes college soccer turns into a grind, right? And,
Right. Yeah. You mentioned Paul Marco. You mentioned Tony DeChico. What did you learn working with both of those men?
Yeah. Well, with Tony, it was just be ready for anything. You could be walking out to the field and Tony be like, "All right, you got the session." And you're like, "I'm 22, man. Like, I have no idea and then like, and to his credit, like, he never once stepped in and like hijacked your thing once he gave you the reins. But also, like, there were plenty of times where he's like, "Hey, hop in, do a demo." And you're like, "Oh, this dude's like 70. Like, he's just going to, patty cake the ball into it." And I swear he almost broke my nose the first time because I was not ready for him to wallop the ball the way he did. So with him, it was just, expect the unexpected, catch the kids being good. Like, yes, he wrote that book, but like, he lived that stuff every day. It wasn't like some of these books you read, you're like, that dude's so full of it. Like, Tony just was everything that he said he was. And then working for Paul was an awesome experience, a challenging experience. Once Paul trusts you, he kind of just keeps giving you more and more, and lets you run it. He really wants to develop you as a coach. But like, I think the one thing I learned from him the most was there's a lot more time than you realize in a day. And it's just how you use it. That doesn't mean you got to work 20 hours a day, but if you're going to sit down and do something, get it done. And then you got all the time in the world to do whatever else you need to do. Now, that I learned like after the fact, because when I worked for Paul, my wife was playing in Costa Rica professionally. And so like, I just was at the office from 6 a.m. till 8 o'clock at night because I had nowhere to go. It was either that or go to the ale house and drink beers and eat a pizza by yourself. So I tried to balance that, but those are probably the two big things I learned from those guys. And then just be loyal. There were challenging things about working for each of them, but I'm not going to share that because they were so good to me, if that makes sense. Like,
sure. So you're in New York, you're, having a lot of success in the goalkeeping world and producing, some collegiate goalkeepers who are doing very well, performing well. All of a sudden you take a detour to Northern Kentucky University. Like, how does that come up?
Well, there's this woman who's the mother of my two children, and she had the opportunity to start working at Deloitte, and there's no Deloitte office in Binghamton, New York. So there's soccer everywhere. So I told Paul, I said, "Hey, at the end of the season, like, I'll stay through December, but I'm going to leave and get married, and Hannah is going to start her job in Cincinnati." So I moved to Cincinnati with no plan other than get married on New Year's Eve 2016 and figure it out. So NKU was, seemed like the best opportunity at the time. And I worked at Cup, which was great. That's how Greg and I met. And that's how I then got connected with EV. But then it just, I didn't even make it to the season. It wasn't a good environment. It wasn't a healthy environment for me. It didn't mesh with what I believe in. So I quit. And that was probably the most liberating thing I've ever done as a coach, was walk away from something that I didn't agree with. And again, had no plan. And then quit, and Orlando City called like 3 days later. So I convinced my Cincinnati born and bred wife to leave Cincinnati 6 months after we got married, which, if anyone knows Cincinnati girls, that is a world record and accomplishment. So my wife used her one and only transfer at Deloitte to transfer to the Tampa office. We moved to Sanford, Florida, and spent a little over 2 years in Orlando. And my wife basically lived in a hotel in Fort Lauderdale because of the client she was on, and I coached.
So did you coach in the Orlando City Academy?
So funny story. The whole point was to come down, work at Orlando City Seminole, which was the only satellite at the time, and I was going to be the ECNL boys and girls goalkeeper director, and then the liaison / assistant goalkeeper coach with the pro academy with the boys. The day my wife and I are driving the truck from Cincinnati, my buddy, who's the Orlando City B and academy goalkeeper coach, says, "Hey, they cut OCB. I'm fired. I don't have a job. Sorry, the plan's not going to work." So I've just uprooted my whole life, convinced my wife because of this great plan to get into the goal of MLS, and now it's blown up. So, and that also meant some money that was supposed to come in 6 months never came. So, convinced my wife to move to Sanford, Florida for $30,000. Yeah, that went over really well. But in that time, got some cool opportunities, so it worked out.
I noticed you're back in Cincinnati.
We'll get there. We'll get there. Yes, that is, you can get a Cincinnati girl to leave, but you're always coming back. At some point, you're coming back. So during that 2 years, it was really good. I got to design and run my first program from scratch because I took what was in place and kind of blew it up because it wasn't inclusive to all the kids. It was only inclusive to like the best kids, which that's just not my style. Like anyone that wants to get better, we're going to make them better. You might get a little bit more based on the level you're at, but everybody gets as much opportunity as possible. So got to do some volunteering in the NWSL during my time there. Worked with the Houston Dash back when they had a part-time goalkeeper coach who only flew in for game day on road trips. So I got to work with Jane Campbell and Bianca Henniger, which was really cool. And then the next year, Lloyd actually brought me in to be his like assistant with like Ashlyn Harris, Haley Kopmeyer, and Lainey Burdett, which was awesome. Intimidating experience when Ashlyn Harris is telling you to hit the ball fucking softer, yet then 2 minutes later, hit it fucking hard. You never know what you're going to get. So but those were long days, 7 a.m. in for the first team with the women, then home for lunch and back on the field at 3:30. So, but again, it was just me and the dog because Hannah was in a hotel. So I was like, well, either sit at home and do nothing or get more opportunities.
So 2 years into this, Hannah's still part of it. How do you end up in Nashville?
Well, literally,
is that a Stuart Brown? Because
that's a Stuart Brown. That's a Stuart Brown.
You don't know EV at this point, so
the only thing I know about EV is that he's at Royce. You hooked me up with him, so I'm wearing Royce gloves. That's what that is, and like that. This EV dude probably forgot more about goalkeeping than I know, right? And he happened to coach my favorite goalkeeper. So, that's what I know about EV. But from the day I got to Orlando, Stuart was trying to get me to move to Nashville. And then my wife and I had some things happen, and we both kind of looked at each other and said, we got to get out of here. It wasn't necessarily work related, but it was just, we got to get out of here. So I literally text Stuart when they came to play. I said, hey, can we grab a beer? That beer turned into like a night out with all the Tennessee boys. And the next thing I know, I'm flying up to help with some clinic that Evie's set up with Dan Gaspar and Bushy. And Evie's like, hey, can I announce that you're coming? I'm like, dude, I haven't even gotten a job offer. You can't announce that I'm coming here yet. I haven't said yes, He's like, okay, sorry. I'm like, it's okay. I'm just telling you, please don't blow my spot up. I haven't negotiated anything yet. And then I'm like, this place is cool. It's close to Cincinnati. It's about 4 hours. Like, Hannah's parents will be happy. We're closer, but I'm not ready to move back yet, right? There's still the dream of the pro game or going back to college, like not sure. So we go to Nashville and spend 2.5 years grinding and laughing our butts off with EV. So, and getting told you're crazy, Lou, by EV on a regular basis. So
you get back into college game with Coach David Costa.
Yep.
Again, what did you learn from him to that you take to this day?
The number one thing that I took from Dave is that it's a game. It shouldn't be everything about you. Like you can't neglect your wife and hopefully kids one day for this game, because the game will always be here. They won't. And at first I'm like, this dude's full of it. Like I've seen him, like he's worked at NC State, like he's Xavier, all these. And then I watched him live everything he said. And it was just a kind of a gut check over time. It was like, this game is amazing. I love what I do, but like my wife is getting nothing from me because I'm gone all the time. So honestly, I would say Dave Costa's probably helped shape me the most as in terms of like living the values you say you live, right? If family is the number one thing on your value chart, but you're never around, like then you're just full of it, right? Or if you don't make time for your wife, your kids, your extended family, whatever, then you can't say family is the number one or number two thing on your list. But yet I'm over here going faith, family, friends, soccer, but yet soccer is at the top of the list and I'm never around because it's my job. It's my job. It's my job. And it's like, I don't think I've ever made enough money to justify that. And I don't think I ever will. Right. So the ability to say no is probably those things from Dave. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to put you on the spot here. Obviously, you say you don't know EV. You know he's the Royce guy getting some free gloves. You go into his environment. So what's the EV training program look like to you? What did you feel? Or is it basically do your thing? I don't want anyone calling me. What? So I want to hear your version. Then I'm going to ask EV what his version was, and his responsibilities to you. So
you can tell the truth now too.
Evie knows this. Like, I was brought in to take what Evie put in place to a whole nother level. Evie, based on what resources he was allocated, was doing an awesome job, in my opinion. But it was any goalkeeper comes on these nights outside of ECNL, and we're all at this place. And if you make it, you make it. Ages kind of, and it was just, but it was based on what he was given in terms of hiring coaches, what he was given in terms of like equipment, right? Like, I thought it was good. And then I went in and was like, Evie, we're going to blow this up and we're going to make it even better. And to be fair, Evie was like, cool, let's do it. I think the other thing was Evie had developed some really good relationships with parents. And at the time I was still like young and dumb and combative and was like, no, this is what we're doing. I don't really care. And like, Evie was like, well, you can't do that here. Like that dude's worth $2 billion. And I'm like, oh, oops. Didn't think about that. Right. So like basically what we did is I went nuts. I got approval to buy anything under the sun equipment wise. I got the go ahead to hire like 3 more coaches, so that Evie and I could just coach the top kids and the Williamson County kids because that's where we lived, and then that way we weren't driving to Murfreesboro on a regular basis. We weren't driving to the west side of Nashville on a regular basis. We were going out to check on it and make sure it was doing what we asked them to do, but like. Then Evie could use his knowledge on Thursday nights and coach the goalkeepers in the game, in their practices, and then be there with me on Mondays and Wednesdays to coach them. And then I would coach. We'd be And then Tuesdays, I'd be like, Evie, you take a break, right? And then Thursdays, he had the ECNL kids by himself, which was great. But we just took it to another level. Like when you have 2 directors and you're able to hire more people, it made it a lot easier to take it to the next level. But Evie saved my butt so many times. I put my foot in my mouth. He's like, hey, you can't do that. I'll take care of it. I'll smooth it over for you. Because he knew some of these kids for I don't know how long, whereas I'm coming in going, no private training, no this, no that, and like, no, you can't be with ECNL because you're not good enough. Instead of being like, well, you're not on an ECNL team. I learned he taught me a lot about how do you communicate with a different class of people, if that makes sense.
It does.
Class A's.
So Evie, your chance here. Obviously, you got a young gun, full of blaze, full of energy, full of aggression. It sounded like he wants to put his stamp of approval on the. There's a new sheriff in town.
Yeah.
So what did you like about Lou? And then what did you like? Hey, let's. He just mentioned some things like, hey. Where you had to step in, was it like that, or was it even worse?
No, it was not. I mean, Lou hit the ground. Lou was hired full time, okay. And Stuart came to me before I hired Lou and said, "Hey, I'm going to hire Lou. Can you mentor him?" Right? Because I was a part-time coach, right? Because I was working for Royce and I was coaching at Vanderbilt or whatever. But and I said, sure, and I had told these guys, listen, I got maybe 2 years left in me and then I'm done, So Lou came in and he was attacking it and the kids loved him but is, as every place you coach is different, right? And your clientele, because of that, is different. And Tennessee is different than Florida. Tennessee is definitely different than Ohio, right? As far as level and aspirations and history of where these kids from a club are going to play. Example, on the boys' side, back when we were coaching, there were very few kids who even thought of going and playing in college on the boys' side, Girls' side, yeah, because we had a good ECNL program and Lou was there and Lou had a lot of contacts on the women's side and, it worked great. But on the boys' side, that wasn't the case, right? When he first started. It's different now. It's different. It's been improved. And he was a large part of the improving of it. But, if you compare that, for example, to, goalkeepers who are in Ohio, boys in Ohio are looking to play in college. Not necessarily D1 because as we know, there's not a whole, there's less D1 programs than there is in the women's game, but these kids still wanted to go and play in college and believe that they could, so that was a big part of it. But as far as, Lou and I were the classic example of the old bull and the young bull. Have you heard that story?
We're all
I told EV, before you tell that, I told a group of U15 players that one time, and I had a mob come up to me.
Of course.
Greg, you've never heard that story.
I've never heard
that story?
EV, it's all yours, baby.
Yeah, you got to tell this. This is good.
And I'll tell you that Hank told me this back in the day. 2 bulls are walking along the ridge. One's old and one's young. And they're walking along, and they look down in the valley, and there's all these cows. And the young bull nudges the old bull on the shoulder. He goes, hey, look at all those cows down there. Let's run down there and fuck a few of them. Right? And the old bull goes, relax, Junior. Let's walk down and fuck them all. That was kind of me and Lou. Dude.
I'm over here like, hey, we got to do this now. He's like, okay, we got to build to that. Like, you can't do that. Yeah. I'm like, we can do it right now. He's like, no, you can't.
Yeah. But the great thing about Lou was he had Stuart's here. And as he said, hey, Stuart, we need 3 more coaches. Okay. Hey, Stuart, here's the best example. One of the things that Lou got us that that I never got us because even though I asked for it, was a bigger area to train goalkeepers in. You know, until Lou got here, we were training, in front of a goal, basically, right? As you know, you can only do so much that way. So yeah, so it was great. It worked out, and he had aspirations to be the best. And if you're an older coach or an older player, and somebody younger than you is saying, "Hey, this is what I want to do," you help them.
Right. Yeah.
So
All right, Lou. So you're on the pipe dream. EV's gonna quote retire. You're in an MLS city. Are you like pumped? Like, hey, I'm gonna get this, and I'll take over EV, and then shoot right into the Nashville pro team. So is this the thought process at the time?
No. The thought process was, I want kids moving to play for us. Like, I want goalkeepers to move to play for us. I figured out pretty quickly that NSC was not going to be an option, and I didn't want to work for who was in charge at that time. Now it's a different it would be a different story, but at the time I was like, I want nothing to do with this academy. They put sour taste in my mouth. They took EV 3 or 4 kids our first year. And the best example is these guys came and watched tryouts after COVID, and I looked them point blank in the eye and I said, "Hey, are you going to take this kid or what? Or are you going to let me get him all sorted with us, and then right before the season, are you going to take him?" I got a blank stare, a smirk, and a chuckle, and I drove the golf cart back over to EV, and I said, "They're going to take this kid, Noah Clement. They're going to ruin him in 3 years, and he's going to quit soccer. Fuck those guys." That's literally what I said to him, verbatim. This is when we had 45 kids in each age group trying out to play goalkeeper for us after a year. And this is after COVID. We're Evie and I are this is the greatest day ever. We can actually bring in some new blood, all this stuff, right? And then politics gets in the way, but whatever. But I'm raging because I'm they're going to take this kid after I order his uniform, because that was one of the things I did. I did all the ECNL uniforms, and I'm just sitting there, and I kid you not, I've literally hit send on the uniform order, and I get a call from the mom. NSC didn't even have the courtesy to contact Evie and I about any of the goalkeepers they were taking, which what we want. We want to put them in the best possible environment, but hey, thanks for everything you did, but we're going to take over from here. Fine, no problem. That's literally I hang my hat on that. I've put a kid in an MLS academy every year I've been in youth soccer, at least one. I love it for the kid. I don't give a crap. I don't post social media. I don't give a shit. But at least have the common courtesy to call and be hey, we're going to offer this kid a spot, right? And that was kind of the nail in the coffin for me with those guys. I don't have any time for you. And now it's totally changed. That whole group's gone. I work with those guys to get our players in that are in Murfreesboro. So I've got no issues now, but at the time that was not. My goal was to get as many kids to want to move, because everyone was moving to Nashville, and I wanted kids to convince their parents to come play. They wanted to come play for us. And to be fair, we did it a couple of times. More on the boys' side than the girls' side, but I think Nashville NSC had part to do with that. But yeah, no, I was just head down, all in on ECNL. At the time, I think DA was around when I first got there, so we were just trying to prove the point that we were the best. All
right, so no MLS dream found in Nashville. One day you wake up and Ohio's knocking on the door. Cincinnati's calling again.
This is a funny story.
Yeah, so take us through this little pathway here.
So I think it's the second weekend after Henry's born. I'm back. Second week I'm back on the field. So I took 2 weeks off. I got a phone call 10 days in. When are you coming back? I said, in 2 weeks, like I said, my son was just born. And I'm what's going on here? Evie's got it covered. I've got every goalkeeper coach at the games. I don't need to be there. The world is not going to end. So I was a little annoyed. And then 2 weeks later, we're playing King's Hammer in Regional League. and I walk by and I know Chris Black and Vince. Chris Black and I worked Soccer Plus together, and I just went over to say hi because we're playing them. And I walk by and I'm like, "Hey, where you guys live in Cincinnati?" You know, because that's the question here. Where you go to high school? And one of the girls like, "I go to Turpin." I was like, "Oh, my wife went to Turpin. She's Hannah Coles." They're like, "Oh, she was a badass," and I'm like, "Oh God, crap! I just opened a can of worms," because like a week earlier they had asked for some names for a goalkeeper director job, and I didn't give my name. I was in a good place, like I was making really good money. You know, we had a house, like we loved our neighborhood, all the things. And then didn't think anything of it. They interviewed my buddy. He turned it down. And then I get a text like, "Hey, you want to have a conversation?" And like, they got me at the right time. Like I had been home for like one weekend since my son was born. I'm getting ready to go to Florida in June for ECNL playoffs with the girls with 7 teams. Like I'm going to be there for 10 days. Like, and I'm like, "EV, should I take this call?" He's like, "I think you should, Lou. Like, because your boy's only going to be young for so long, and like this ain't sustainable." Like, and I'm like, "All right, I'll take the call." Like, so I took the call. I liked the call. I said I'll follow back up after playoffs. Playoffs was a whirlwind of delays, getting yelled at about like youth soccer, because like at the end of the day, it's still youth soccer, but like do not yell at me about your goalkeeper being warmed up on time when the game got moved 30 minutes and no one fucking told me. Like, I'm sorry. Like, do not. And by the way, I'm a grown ass man. I like just say, "Hey, Lou, like, I need you to we got 5 minutes to kick off." "Oh, okay, no problem. My bad." Like, sorry, I ran from another field. No one gave me the heads up. So I call them, have another call. I get a job offer, and like I came up here for a visit secretly. Didn't tell my in-laws. Didn't tell the club, like, because I'd seen how people interviewing other places got treated, and I was like, I'm not dealing with that. Which is not really how I roll, but like at the time, it's how I had to protect myself in case it didn't work out. And I actually told my wife I was going to turn it down.
Oh.
It was a massive pay cut. It was starting from zero, like no goalkeeper program at all, like newly created position. And then I got yelled at about like not having taken a COVID shot yet, but I like was going to, but I wasn't sure which one, like all this nonsense that was like, and it was with another coach who hadn't done it too. So like, I'm sitting here going like, this is illegal. And so I came home, I was like, I'm taking the job. I don't even care. Like, we just got to go. So I took the job and went in the next day and resigned, gave my 2 weeks. And it went exactly how I thought it was going to go. Not well.
So go into that a little bit here, Lou. What was not well about it? What was not well about it?
There was about what? About the resignation, or about why I left?
Whatever you want to talk about.
No, I can fill you in here.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Evie has a better.
To the rescue.
Yeah.
Evie to the rescue.
A lot of Lou and I had a lot of discussions when this was going on. Okay, and my explanation or my advice to Lou was what he said. Listen, I said, if when I look back on my career, and I was home more than Lou was because I was just coaching in college. I wasn't coaching club. I said, but the thing that I missed was, I didn't see Zach and Devin a lot when they were little guys. And I look back at that now. That's a soft regret that I have. So I just told him. I said, listen, you don't want that to happen when you're my age. Number one. Number two, you're allowed as a coach to improve your station in life. And if this improves your station in life, regardless of money, right? But, Hannah's parents are there, right? So you've got built-in childcare if you need it, right? And grandparents, there's nothing better than grandparents, right? And you're going to Cincinnati, which, let's be honest, or back then for sure, was a better environment for soccer than Nashville was, based purely on the fact that players wanted to play at the next level. So it was easier to coach versus trying to just keep kids sharp. And so we had many of these discussions, throughout the couple of weeks. And he and Lou said many times, he goes, I got to go in there and tell Stuart this. I don't want to do that. And I said, I get that. I understand that, but that's what you do when you're a dad, when you're a guy and you don't have kids, whatever. Right. But when you're a dad, you're looking out for your family now. Sometimes you got to go in there and you got to do tough things that you don't want to do, but you got to do them because those are going to come up later in life. You might as well use this as practice. Right. And you've heard me say this a million times, Mom, nobody was killed. No villages were burned, so, okay. It's not great, but you got to look long-term. And that's kind of where, the discussions that we had during this period where, I just tried to share it with him, maybe looking at it from a different perspective, and the other thing too was, like he said, you're starting from zero. Well, if you're starting from zero, right, that's right down Lou's alley, right? Because he's got a chance to put in. You don't have to fight anybody. He just has to build it, And it's like, and building it's tough, as in anything, any business, but you don't have to fix anything. You can just start from scratch and build it the way you want to. So, and I think ultimately he made the right decision, but it certainly wasn't easy. And again, everybody in coaching has been through that. It's at one point or the other. And it's just part of the deal.
Could I make a statement here? Evie, that was one of the best saves I've ever seen you make, my friend.
Hey, just so you know, I can cut it close with this call, so because we're having a good time, and I don't want to end it because there's more to the story. So don't feel like we got to stop right at 60 minutes. But yeah, I mean, Evie was a great mentor, not only building the program there in Tennessee to a new level, but also like, the number one thing, like Evie pointed out, that I hear from many coaches, great coaches, any book I read about a coach is exactly what he just talked about is I missed my kids. I didn't see them grow up, or I don't have a relationship with my kids at all because of what I put into this game. And like the best thing Evie said to me one day, we're out at the fields. It's 7:30 in the morning in the summer. And he's like, the game ain't going anywhere, dude. But that kid is only 6 months old once, right? And, that like struck a chord because I hadn't seen anything. I never heard his first dada. I didn't hear any of that, right? And, thankfully I've heard all that with my second, right? And I didn't lose all that time with Henry. So, I have a lot of thanks for Evie with that decision-making process, so.
Yeah, all right. We still have time here. You don't need to leave till I think we're going to go another 15 here.
Yeah, we can do that. That's no problem.
Just so everyone knows. I want to talk a little bit about, and Pat, I'd like to get your opinion as well here. You've coached at 3 Division I schools. What makes a Division I goalkeeper? When you go evaluate and one of your buds says, "Hey, is this keeper good enough?" What are some of the essential things that you check off? Pat, I'm going to ask you the same question. So I'll start with you, Lou.
All right, I can start. Yeah. For me, Division I goalkeeper on the men's side, because that's where I actually coached, is presence is the number one thing I looked for. Not necessarily physical presence, but the ability to deal with whatever the physical challenges were of the conference, first and foremost. I never worked in the ACC, the Big Ten, or anything like that. So I wasn't really worried about what they could do out of conference. The conference was the only chance we had to make the NCAA tournament. So can they have a presence in our conference? So that might mean they're 6'3", that might mean they're 6'1", and they're amazing in the air. It might mean they're 5'10", and they can react on the line, manage in terms of communication and negate those situations. So presence is kind of an all-encompassing thing for me. The other thing I looked for was distribution, depending on the style. Like, some places we wanted to play, in other places I just wanted them to hit a 70-yard diagonal every single time, and could they do it consistently? And then the last thing was, did they want to be where I was? I don't need a kid who's looking to transfer. Like, you want me to make you better, you need to be with me for 2 to 3 years, hopefully 4. Do you want to be at the school that we are recruiting you to? Those were the 3 things I looked for. Everything else, like, if I'm even watching you, you've got a solid technical base. You come from a decent pedigree background. But if you don't have those other 3 things, it doesn't matter how good a shot stopper you are, how technical you are, how brave you are in a 1v1. Like, if you don't have those other 3, it was a non-negotiable for me, because everything else could be coached. I can't coach your presence. I can a little bit, but if you don't have like I just go back to like Bushy. When I watched him play, like, that dude was in charge. That dude did not need anybody's help. He could get everything he needed out of everybody in front of him and around him. And so that was kind of the number one thing I looked for. And you had to be able to at least get into the school I was at. So that always was a piece of it for me. So,
all right, Pat, same thing. And Pat, before you answer, presence seems to be a big term, and it can be very vague. I would, right? I see you nodding with me. Explain this a little bit, because I get asked that a lot. I'm sure Lou gets asked that. Evie gets that. Pat, I'm sure when you're saying, hey, the kid lacks presence. Well, what do you mean? So when a kid doesn't have presence, Pat, maybe start there and what you are looking for with presence.
This is, presence. It's not necessarily just communication, but communication being the literal execution of speaking, okay? Because you can communicate without speaking, obviously. But, it's the kid, to me, presence is a projection, is what it is, okay? And so are you back there, like, and this may sound funny, but are you back there like sending out the vibes of what we're doing here and how we're going to get together and how we're working together? And obviously the easiest way to execute that is to vocally direct, boom, boom, boom. So that becomes reading the game and directing your players to be what's the word before? Again, I'm sorry, I mold lots of concussions when I was young, but preemptive. Thank you, preemptive. I actually wrote a book once with big words like that, but I forgot all of that shit now. But anyway, so if you're not preemptive, you are definitely not, you have no presence at all. If you're back there just reacting to stuff, okay, you lack presence, even if you're talking. Okay, so to me, that preemptiveness is the key to having presence. And then the other thing about having presence too is just being good. You can be using preemptive and let shit go through your hands. You got no praise. It's like, he sucks, So there's a lot of things, and it's one of these abstracts, but the other thing too is, Lou, when I go up and watch a game, and it's like, you look at these 2 kids, and one of them, it's just, you take a Jordan Pickford, okay? To me, he is the quintessential definition of overt presence, right? He's off his line way far, blah, 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 showman out there. And the funniest thing about that, going on a tangent here, is off the field, that guy is like shy. and really withdrawn. And I have firsthand sources that can validate that for me. And in the limited times that I've met him, he's very reclusive in a sense, but he becomes a different human being out on the field. So preemptive, projecting, and incompetent. That's, to me, what presence is. Okay. And I could probably go on for another hour, honestly, but we got limited time.
Right.
Now I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, I think, Bone, there's presence from a player's point of view, and there's presence from a coach's point of view. Okay. Presence from a coach's point of view, we've just talked about, right? Somebody who's back there who looks like they're in charge, right? And then they have to prove that they're in charge by doing all the simple things. From a player's point of view, presence is when you look down at the other goalkeeper and you go, fuck me. Okay. We're going to have to be perfect today to win. Okay. That's
I think on that EV, like the physical component of that, it is an easy way to do it. But I think, we talk about there's this overemphasis on block saves and diving. And like, I remember growing up, like the coaching point was, hey, move your feet and catch the ball, and they'll be pissed off. Like that's another way to have presence, right? And I still use that today. I'm like, hey, if you can dive and catch it, even better. If you can move your feet and catch it and make it look even easier, like that is presence. I looked for that. Like, were they going for the camera save, or are they doing their job and just getting it done and annoying the other team with how easy they're making things look? And that's when, quite honestly, sometimes I went with a smaller kid over the big guy because the big guy didn't even know how to use his feet to move, right? But like I could talk about that stuff for days because it always, I think too, the environment that you're recruiting for at the D1 level is a huge factor in what you're looking for. Like I know, I was fortunate to instruct Pat's son Kyle a couple summers ago, and like what he's looking for at Duke, totally different than what I was trying to get at NKU or Binghamton, right? Like I was going for the same academic level of kid at Duke, but there's no chance I was getting the kids that Kyle's getting.
Lou, I'm glad you brought that up because when Greg said the three things you look for, D1, et cetera, and I was kind of stuck because the only D1 keepers I get to see in depth is I'm grateful to John Kerr that whenever I'm up visiting Kyle, he's like, come on out to the sessions, and I get to go out. So I get to see Kyle with the Duke guys. And I'm like, that's a whole different thing, I think, than what Lou's dealing with. But the one thing I do agree with you wholeheartedly on there, that where you're at, where Kyle's at, or et cetera, is the ability to play with your feet is so underemphasized, in my opinion, even with guys that are out there that are running these nice academies or are part of a big club. I have found that I've gone on a crusade to find all the young keepers and say,
maybe not the best phrase right now, but we get
it. A campaign.
There you go.
I'm on a campaign here.
Yeah. At least it's not a jihad.
By the way, summa cum laude. But all kidding aside, to find all the young keepers like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and say, stop just working with this kid on catching the ball. Okay? Stop playing this kid in goal all the time, every game. Okay? It's just, because I've seen some great kids come in at 16 that are fantastic as goalkeepers, but they're not soccer players. And it's like, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's too late.
I totally agree.
It's a core tenet of every program I build is goalkeeper coaches don't serve in my programs unless it's to make numbers.
When we had Stan Anderson on, he brought up a great point that every ball you don't strike, they are.
Correct.
Yeah. And I was like, yep, good, because I'm 62 and my hips freaking ache when I come home. So you guys are going to hit them all from now on.
Exactly.
All right. I want to ask. Yeah, we got a few minutes here.
We're good. I'll tell you when we got to stop.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Advice. You
That's
said
good
you help a
presence.
lot of kids. Pat, you help a lot of kids. Evie, you used to help a lot of kids. What's your advice for these, high school seniors who are going to be freshmen? And you can take it from a men's point of view and a women's point of view, because most of the time, especially at the D1 level, barring injury, you're going to sit. And the last 3 years, you played literally every game with your club in high school. And now you got to make a mental adjustment. Like, you're not going to see a ball or a live game for 6 months or longer if you think about it. Okay. And then how does that feel for you to jump in the portal and you don't have any film, right? Especially if you did it your freshman year. So I'm sure, you guys could give some input or advice, like, hey, at least stay 2 years, or, all these coaches are going to say to these kids, hey, yeah, you're going to come in and compete, right? We all know how that goes because the coach is on the line, and is he really going to have a freshman play? The answer is no in most cases. So, Pat, why don't you start, and then we'll go to Lou, and then have Evie take it home here.
And I know, I'll be brief. We're limited for time, but this is why I'm one of the hugest advocates out there screaming, gap year, gap year, gap year. Okay. Because going abroad or going to a gap year academy, you are going to train like a professional, and they are responsible. It is part of their curriculum to make sure you get a ton of match time. It just is. And so this is such a wonderful time to just immerse yourself in development, so that now when you come back at 19 or 20, you're on level playing ground and you've got a much better chance to be playing in that college program.
I agree with that, Pat.
That's my advice.
Right. Now, what's your advice to the family who can't afford it, right? Or right, because it's not cheap.
Yeah.
All right, I think we all know that. And some people just don't have the funds to do that, or really don't want to send their kid overseas. So
Okay.
So now give us the American, maybe a normal advice. I don't want to say normal advice, but a normal kid not going overseas, for the gap year.
Okay, well then, so that leaves a group here, because it's not a big group. If you can't afford to do a gap year, then you definitely can't afford to send your kid to college, except for the FAFSA process and what FAFSA can do for you. Okay, because Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's not a whole lot of goalkeepers getting scholarships. Okay. So as coming out as true freshmen, there's
more now with some of the unlimited scholarship piece that's available for those 28 at D1. But at D2, no. The starter's normally on money, and that's about it. Maybe you're on a couple grand, but when school's $50,000 a year, $5,000 isn't really that helpful, right? And not all these D1s are fully funded. So, like, a lot of times you might be on a small piece, and then some programs you might have 3 goalkeepers on a full ride, but that's like the women's game. The men's game, your some of your ACC schools might fit that bill, but but the reality is there's not a lot of second and thirds on money. There's just not especially not year one.
That's my point exactly.
I to go on that, I'm a huge advocate of junior college. In Tennessee, that would get my head ripped off. In Florida and Ohio and Northern Kentucky, and in our location in Murfreesboro, which is outside, that actually is like, ooh, that's a great idea. Like when you explain what that means. But in terms of the advice I give to all the players, I say, are you picking this school for soccer because you think you're going to start, or are you picking this school because the environment that's created by the program is where you want to be, and the school itself is where you want to be? because here's what's going to happen. You are not going to play freshman year. I don't care what they told you. I don't care if unless you're a youth national team starter, the likelihood of you starting, and even then, is very low. Because if we look at Florida State on the women's side, the youth national team goalkeeper never played a minute for Florida State, and now she's a pro. The freshman was brought in that ended up starting because of injury, was not projected to play ever for them. But the girl who's now a pro was off at the World Cup. So it was like, this is what we got. Now it's Florida State, so not really that big a deal. But, I look at kids from Cincinnati, kids from Tennessee that I've stayed in touch with. The reality is you are not going to play as a freshman, and you're probably not going to play as a sophomore unless the senior is done. Regardless of how good you are, regardless of what they told you. So I tell everyone, plan to be somewhere for 18 months at the very minimum. And then I spend the next 6 months convincing them not to go in the portal because the statistics are not in goalkeepers' favor when they transfer. You are not going to go to the same level of school 9 times out of 10 that you are leaving. So if you're at a Power 4 school, you're probably not going to a Power 4 school unless there's been some back channeling done ahead of time, which is technically illegal. I say technically. And then you're probably going to drop down at least conference level or potentially division, or you're just never going to find a school. So I spend a lot of my time convincing alumni of the programs I've worked at not to go in the portal. I spend a lot of time on the front end trying to help them find the right place first. And also pointing out, hey, if you graduate in 3 years, you can go play D2 for grad school and have 2 years left and get it paid for because they're going to go, ooh, D1 goalkeeper. I don't care how many minutes they played. Give them a spot, give them money, pay for grad school. On the boys' side, it's even harder. I'm like, look, man, you have no game minutes. You have 3 games in the USL2 or the OVPL. You ain't going D1. I will bang down every door for you, but man, you're going to go into the exact same situation you're already in. So for me, I spend a lot of energy on the front end trying to help these kids find the right fit the first time. And then a tenet of the way I run any program I build is we try to have 2 goalkeepers on the top first and second team, and they are required to split up until U19 so that they learn how to sit on the bench. They learn how to support other goalkeepers. That's always a rocky road initially. And now most of our U19 top teams have 3 goalkeepers because of the birth year, which should change going into next year. But they learn, I try to teach them how to be a backup. Again, it gets tricky when you're paying to play, but at the same time, everybody else has to earn playing time on the team. Why does the goalkeeper not? I just find that just because you're the goalkeeper doesn't mean you get 90 minutes every game at the youth level. I think that's part of what we're doing a disservice to a lot of these players in preparing them for the next level because they don't have to earn anything. They just, I'm the only goalkeeper, so I get to play every minute. And then they go to college I don't get to play. Well, because that girl's U23 national team starter. That girl is a 3-year starter in goal, who redshirted her freshman year. She's got 1 more year. You're not going to play. Come here, buddy. Come over this side.
Come give you a hug.
Yeah, come give me a hug. It's okay.
So listen,
Say hi. Say good night. Say
I
hi.
think
Hi, Henry. Hi.
Good night. Love you.
I think a lot of programs too, even when they bring the freshmen in, and this is both genders here, is they're going to look in the portal for a starter every year. They're going to look and see what's out there, right? So
100%. 100%.
So you get these schools. Oh well, these kids think I'm going to go in and get better, and my junior year I'll be ready and groomed to go, and it's Yeah, first of all, college may not necessarily be the best place to develop your game, okay? As well as they're always going to be sniffing to see what's out there to find the next best thing until the next best thing comes along, and you may have never been the best thing to start with,
I think
right?
there's a misconception that you play high level club soccer, you're going to get a return on your investment as a parent.
Well, who sells that, I wonder?
I don't sell that. I can tell you that right now. I never have and never will. And I'm, it sometimes gets me in trouble at places I work, but I don't promise anything. And I think it's part of why the programs I've been fortunate to work with and help build have the success, because there's no promises to anybody. There's just not, because that's not life. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm not guaranteed to have a job when I walk in the office tomorrow, knock on wood, hopefully I do. But it's one of those where if we're telling these kids that because they play for us, they're going to go here, then we're just used car salesmen, quite honestly. And I find that a disservice, and I find that extremely frustrating, because I compete against it all the time. And I'm sure we all have at some point, right? And it's frustrating. But the transfer portal is here. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. And if we don't educate these kids and families on the realities of it, like you said, Pat, then we're going to keep having the same conversations over and over with kids who are like, I'm just going to transfer. You have 0 minutes to show in 3 years. You are not transferring.
Yeah, you and I.
You are going to go join a fraternity or a sorority. That is what you are going to do. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. But let's not have misconceived notions that just because you were on the roster at a massive school, that you're just going to magically walk in somewhere else and be the guy or the gal now. You're just not. So,
yeah, and unfortunately, Lou, you know this, the delusion runs wild. Even and Greg, yep, you're laughing. Evie, believe it or not, Evie, it's still out there.
Why do you think Evie's a pilot now and not a coach anymore?
Dude, here's what I always told people to still do. Do you want to play, or do you want to be in a program where you're part of whatever, right? And you have to remember, and if you're talking to the kid, I would say you have to remember the game is the teacher, right? You're a goalkeeper. We can train you and make you really good at training. But until you get in the game and are in the fires, that's where you're going to learn. And so if you want to go someplace and be a better goalkeeper, then you have to pick a place where you can play, regardless of level, regardless of what, 1, 2, 3 NAIA. The game is the teacher. You got to find a place to play. When Bushy was one of the first kids to go out to step out of college soccer after his junior year, and he wanted to go and enter the MLS draft, and I said, no, you need to go to USL and you need to play games. If you play games, okay, you're going to be good enough. But if you try to go now, you're going to be a number 3 or 4 on an MLS team and just train your ass off, which is, hey, it's not a bad thing, but if you want to play, it's not what you're looking for. And the last, on the male side, the last true freshman that stepped in as a goalkeeper and had an impact was a guy named Pat Johnston.
I know that dude.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the truth.
No, I got it. That's a long time ago. So
that's what I'm saying. But that was the game back then. Now it's different.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's
I hate to be that guy, but
you gotta go.
I gotta cut it.
All right.
So if you want to do anything real quick, Greg.
No, I'm not. I'm going to let
Hey.
I want Evie to wrap this up like he always
Well,
does.
first of all, Lou, thank you very mumuch for joining us. It was great.
Yeah.
It's great to see you again. Congratulations on Thomas. Congratulations on Henry. Give Hannah our best. We don't want to keep you from class. But thanks.
Gotta go be dad for 30 seconds too. So
Okay. All right. So
all that
anyway,
fun stuff.
thanks a lot.
Yeah, of course.
Hey,
Thanks, guys.
And just before you go, fella named Logan Fisher says hello. So
Good old Logan Fisher.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Logan
all right,
was
Lou, thank
Logan
you.
was my
All right, guys.
backup in college.
All right. See you guys later.
See you guys.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Three Old Goalies podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on social media. And if you can, give us a 5-star review.